Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're buzzing about bees and honey.
Sounds sweet.
It is, literally. But seriously, ever open a jar of honey and wonder, how did this even happen?
Right, like it's the only food we eat made by insects.
Oh, wild, right. And get this, it can last for thousands of years. Unopened, of course.
Wow, that's amazing. Thousands of years.
Yep, we'll get into all that. But first, let's talk about those busy bees. Specifically, the worker bees.
Yeah, they do all the heavy lifting, from gathering nectar to, well, making the
Talk
hives.
about teamwork. Okay, so let's break it down. It starts with those worker bees out in the fields, right?
Right. They've got this built-in tool, the proboscis.
Hmm.
Basically a tiny straw-like tongue.
Whoa, a bee with a straw.
Exactly. They use it to sift nectar from hundreds, sometimes thousands, of flowers on one trip.
That's a lot of flowers. Do they store all that nectar, like, on the spot?
Nope. They've got this special pouch. It's called a honey stomach.
A honey stomach. Sounds kind of gross, but also very efficient.
Definitely efficient. It's like their own little nectar backpack.
A nectar backpack. I love it. So they fill up their backpacks, then what? Head straight back to the hive.
Not so fast.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets even cooler. They do this thing called trophallaxis.
Trophallaxis. Okay, you're going to have to explain that one.
Basically, it's mouth-to-mouth nectar transfer between bees.
Whoa, so they share.
More than sharing, they're actually adding enzymes to the nectar during this process.
So it's like a mini bee assembly line.
You got it. Each bee adding their special touch. Those enzymes break down the complex sugars, making it easier to digest and, helps preserve it.
Ah, so that's the first step in turning watery nectar into thick honey.
Exactly. But there's one more crucial step. Evaporation. Back at the hive, bees fan their wings to evaporate water from the nectar.
Wait, so like a whole hive of tiny bee fans?
Pretty much. They keep at it until the water content is down to about 18%. That low water content is why honey can last for, thousands of years.
Mind-blowing. But those bees aren't just making honey for us to enjoy centuries later, right?
Right. It's merely their food source, especially important during winter when flowers are scarce.
Like their winter survival kit. Makes sense. And speaking of winter, how much honey can one hive actually produce?
Well, a good season can yield anywhere from 30 to 60 pounds.
Whoa, that's a lot of honey. And it's not all the same, is it? I mean, we've got clover honey, wildflower honey, tons of varieties.
Absolutely. That variety comes from the different flowers the bees visit. Different flowers, different nectar, different honey. Clover honey, for example, is usually light and delicate. Wildflower honey can have a much bolder flavor.
So each jar of honey is like a snapshot of where it was made.
Exactly. It's a taste of that whole ecosystem. And here's something to think about. It takes about 12 bees their entire lifetimes to make just 1 teaspoon of honey.
Wait, seriously, 12 bee lifetimes for 1 teaspoon.
It really makes you appreciate it, doesn't it?
It does. It's like liquid gold. And it's not just for sweetness either. Honey's got all those health benefits. What makes it so special?
Well, honey's been used for medicinal purposes for centuries. Ancient Egyptians even used it to dress wounds.
Wow.
And, modern studies actually show it can help with burns and cuts because of its antibacterial properties.
So it's like nature's Neosporin.
Kinda, yeah. Plus, it's packed with antioxidants and vitamins. A true gift from nature.
Okay, so we've talked about all the good stuff, but I know bees are facing some serious challenges these days.
Unfortunately, that's true. Bee populations are declining all over the world. And that's a big problem because, well, they pollinate about a third of the food we eat.
Yikes. What's going on? Is it pesticides?
Pesticides are a big factor, definitely. But it's actually a combination of things. Habitat loss, diseases, even climate change. It's a complex issue. But before we get into the challenges, maybe we should take a peek inside the beehive itself.
Okay, now you've got me curious. I'm ready to explore that world.
Awesome. It's full of amazing social structures and, well, just incredible cooperation. Let's start with the queen bee.
Perfect. What's her deal? Is she like the boss, calling all the shots?
She's more like the mother of the hive. Her main job is laying eggs.
Okay, so she keeps the colony going.
Exactly. She's the reason they keep going. And she lays a lot of eggs.
How many are we talking?
Up to 2,000 a day.
2,000. Wow, that's a lot of baby bees.
It is.
But she can't do everything, right? The worker bees must have a lot on their plate, too.
Oh, absolutely. Worker bees are like the backbone of the whole hive.
Right, we talked about their nectar collecting skills. What else do they do?
So much. They care for the young bees, those larvae. They build and maintain the honeycomb.
So they're like our architects and the construction workers?
You got it.
Honeycomb is so impressive. Like those perfect hexagons, it's wild.
It's incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
Maximum storage, minimum material.
Amazing. What else?
Oh, and they guard the hive, protect it from invaders, you know, wasps, other animals.
Well, they're the security guards too.
Yep. And don't forget climate control.
Wait, climate control.
Yeah. They regulate the temperature and humidity inside the hive. Got to keep it perfect for the queen, the babies, and of course, making honey.
Wow. These worker bees truly are multi-talented.
They are. It's really incredible. The beehive is like this perfectly organized system. Everyone has their job, and they work together seamlessly.
It makes you think there's so much more to bees than meets the eye.
Exactly. They're not just buzzing around. They've got this complex, fascinating society.
A society we could probably learn a lot from.
Roughly. The teamwork, the dedication, the adaptability, it's really impressive.
So next time you see a bee, just take a second to appreciate where it came from.
Right, that whole world of cooperation, hard work, and of course, delicious honey.
And speaking of which, we can't forget they're facing some tough times right now.
Yeah, sadly it's true. Bee populations are declining globally.
It's scary. What's the main cause? I know we hear a lot about pesticides, but is there more to it?
Oh, definitely. Pesticides are a huge factor, don't get me wrong. But it's also habitat loss, diseases, and even climate change playing a role. It's a lot of things working together.
So it's like a perfect storm.
Kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a problem because bees are so important. They pollinate a third of our food, remember?
Right, right. Okay, let's break down these threats one by one. Starting with pesticides, how exactly do they harm bees?
Well, pesticides are designed to kill insects, right? So it's not surprising they'd affect bees too. Some types, like neonicotinoids, are particularly bad.
Neonicotinoids. What do they do?
They attack the nervous system, disrupt their navigation, communication, even their ability to find food.
So it's not just like instant death.
No, it's more insidious than that. It weakens them over time, makes them more vulnerable to, well, everything else.
That's terrifying. Sounds like we need to rethink our use of these pesticides, like seriously.
I agree. There are alternatives, though, like integrated pest management, which focuses on prevention and natural predators.
So more sustainable and bee-friendly approaches.
Exactly. And it's not just about large-scale agriculture. Even homeowners can choose pesticide-free options for their gardens.
Right, everyone can do their part. Okay, so besides pesticides, what about habitat loss? How's that impacting bees?
It's a huge problem. As we convert more land for farming, cities, all that, bees lose their foraging grounds.
So they're basically losing their homes and their food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it leads to fragmentation. Bee populations become isolated, more vulnerable to diseases, you name it.
It's like their world is shrinking.
That's a good way to put it. And, it reduces genetic diversity, too. Makes them less resilient overall.
Right, so it's a multifaceted problem. You also mentioned diseases. What kind of diseases are affecting bees?
One of the biggest threats is this parasitic mite, Varroa destructor.
Varroa destructor, that sounds ominous.
It is. It attaches to bees and feeds on their hemolymph. It's like their version of blood.
Like a little vampire.
Haha, exactly. And they transmit viruses, too. Really weakens the bees' immune systems.
Yikes, so it's a double whammy.
Pretty much. And unfortunately, these mites are, well, they're everywhere now, affecting bee populations all over the world.
This is sounding pretty bleak. Is there anything we can do to control these mites?
Beekeepers are working on it. They use chemical treatments, but there's also research into more natural approaches, like essential oils or even breeding mite-resistant bees.
So it's an ongoing battle.
It is.
Yeah.
But it shows how important research is. And supporting beekeepers, they're on the front lines.
Absolutely. We need to find solutions. Okay, we've talked about the problems, but what about the solutions? What can we, like everyday people, do to help bees?
There's actually a lot we can do, even in our own backyards. Planting bee-friendly flowers is a great start.
What kind of flowers we're talking?
Native plants are best. They provide the right food and nesting sites.
So it's like creating little bee havens in our gardens.
Exactly. And, of course, reduce pesticide use. Choose organic options if you can.
Right, make it a safe space for them.
Exactly. And if you have a lawn, consider leaving some areas unmowed. Let those wildflowers grow.
So a little wildness can be a good thing.
Definitely. And, support local beekeepers. Buy their honey. It helps them keep their bees healthy.
Plus, you get delicious honey. Win-win. What about educating others? Can we do anything to spread the word?
Oh, for sure. Talk to your friends and family. Share information online. Maybe even organize a bee-themed event in your community.
Create a buzz, so to speak.
Haha, exactly.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps. We can all work together to make the world a little more bee-friendly.
That's inspiring. Now, we've talked about the serious stuff, the threats, the solutions, but let's not forget about the delicious part, the honey.
Ah, yes, honey, liquid gold.
We talked about how bees make it, but what about the variety? Clover honey, wildflower honey, buckwheat honey. How does that all happen?
It all comes down to the source of the nectar. Different flowers have different sugars, different aromas, even different colors.
So if bees visit clover, we get clover honey, wildflowers, wildflower honey.
Yep, and each type has its own flavor. Clover honey is mild, delicate. Wildflower honey much bolder, more complex.
It's like a taste of that landscape, right?
Exactly. And then you've got buckwheat honey, much darker, almost like molasses, really strong flavor.
I've heard buckwheat honey is really good for you.
It is super high in antioxidants.
Yeah.
More minerals than other honeys.
Wow. So much to discover in the world of honey.
Right, it's like a culinary adventure.
Yeah.
And as we enjoy all these flavors, let's remember the bees.
Absolutely. They make this liquid gold possible.
They do so much for us, for the whole ecosystem, really.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, you know? The health of the planet depends on these tiny creatures.
It does. And it brings us back to protecting them, making
Yeah.
mindful choices from our gardens to the products we buy.
Every little bit counts.
It really does. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. It really does make you think. Okay, so what can we do? What are some things people can do to help?
Well, like you said, planting bee-friendly flowers is huge. And, you know, it's not just about planting anything, right?
Right. Native plants are always best. They've evolved alongside our native bees, so they're perfectly suited to their needs.
So it's about creating little bee sanctuaries in our gardens.
Exactly. And of course, reducing pesticide use is essential.
Yeah, we talked about that. It's about making those safe spaces for bees, right?
Right. And if you have a lawn, maybe think about leaving some areas unmowed.
Let it go a little wild.
Yep. Let those wildflowers grow, give bees more foraging options. And, supporting local beekeepers is another great way to help.
Right. Buy their honey. It helps them keep those bee populations strong and healthy. Plus, you get to enjoy delicious local honey.
Exactly. It's a win-win. And what about educating others? Spreading the word about the importance of bees.
For sure. Talk to your friends, family, share information online. Maybe even organize a little bee-themed event in your community. Get people excited about bees.
I love that. Create a buzz, so to speak.
Exactly. Every little bit helps. We can all play a part in making the world a little more bee-friendly.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about the honey.
Right. It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Bees are essential for life as we know it. They pollinate so much of our food, they're crucial for the entire ecosystem.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected. You know, the health of the planet depends on these tiny creatures.
It really does. And, it all comes back to those choices we make, what we plant in our gardens, the products we buy, even just spreading awareness. Every action has an impact.
Well said. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one last thought. Knowing what we now know about bees, their incredible work ethic, the delicious honey they make, and the challenges they face, will we ever look at a jar of honey the same way again?
That's a great question. It really makes you appreciate that jar of honey, doesn't it?
It does. It's like liquid gold, a symbol of nature's intricate beauty and the importance of protecting it.
Absolutely. So let's savor that sweetness, admire the bees, and do our part to make sure they keep buzzing for generations to come.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of bees and honey.
It was my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, remember, every little bit counts. Plant those flowers, support your local beekeepers, and spread the word. Let's all do our part to keep these amazing creatures thriving. Until next time.